Surely most of you watching this video now either A, know who Jemele Hill is, or B, at least know that she tweeted some provocative stuff about President Trump a couple of days ago, such as Trump is a white supremacist who's largely surrounded himself with other white supremacists, and Trump is the most ignorant, offensive president of my lifetime. His rise is a direct result of white supremacy, period. Now, I am no Trump fan, and that's been documented in previous videos on this channel, documented on my Twitter feed at great lengths. I've talked about the hypocrisy of him. I've talked about how he's a con man, how he's been a snake oil salesman. Refused to vote for him, no way in hell. And all of this. So just know that there is some, if you want to call it anti-Trump bias here, a little bit, perhaps, yes. For sure, yes. But also enough to be able to see through the weeds of, you got to kind of call it how you see it too. Has he associated himself with alt-right people that are white supremacists? Yes. So that should call some things into question. Does Donald Trump have a history of some prejudicial and discriminatory statements and actions in his business dealings? Absolutely. Cannot be denied. Those are facts. White supremacist? Could he have some racist tendencies to him? Perhaps. Probably. Could there be some ignorance in that sense and some prejudices there? Oh, surely. But to go white supremacist, that may be more of a thing of guilt by association. I don't know. You know, it's just, Jemele Hill ultimately knew what the hell she was tweeting and why she was tweeting it. And it's that simple. But to say he's the most ignorant president and offensive president of our lifetimes, I honestly don't know what this bitch is talking about. Because to me, George W. Bush and the two unconstitutional foreign wars that he oversaw that led to the death of thousands of Americans unnecessarily and hundreds of thousands of other people around the world unnecessarily, all in the name of oil and spreading democracy, I would think that's much more offensive to me than Trump talking about grabbing women by the pussy and some of the other things he's talked about. I'm just saying. To me, that's more offensive. And to say he's the most ignorant is crap. Because this man, unlike his challenger in 2016, Hillary Clinton, was smart enough to understand what he needed to do to speak to his base, who he needed to win over, in what places he needed to win them over, and he ultimately did, whether you like it or not. The man was smart enough, in spite of all of his flaws, and in spite of all of his shortcomings and all of his BS, to still win in enough places to get over 270 and win the Electoral College and ultimately win the presidency. That doesn't sound like ignorant to me in that sense, and maybe that sense alone, but that was the most important sense of all. He got elected. And also to sit there and say that his rise is a direct result of white supremacy, period. If people want to deny some of those things, you know, to me that represents kind of a Republican, almost conservative type of naiveness bubble where they take things tremendously out of context and can't see what's clearly obvious to anybody with a brain. But then this is on the flip side here where Jemele Hill represents kind of that democratic, liberal kind of head in the sand, cynical view of things, and it's because of this and it's absolute. And again, taking things incredibly out of context and just not painting anywhere nearly an accurate enough picture. And how ironic, two allegedly entirely different sides that take two divergent paths to ultimately end up at the same damn place, taking things incredibly out of context and both being wrong. Are there some elements of white supremacy or white victimization that allowed him to win in certain places? Absolutely. Was that solely because of race and only because of race? Absolutely not. And to assert that is completely and totally ridiculous and disingenuous, and people that say that should be ashamed of themselves. Does it have anything to do with the fact that Hillary Clinton did not excite women as much as was expected? Absolutely. Did it have anything to do with the fact that she did not excite black and Hispanic voters as much as Barack Obama? Absolutely. Did it matter that she didn't even bother campaigning in places like Michigan or Wisconsin till the very end, or in the case of Michigan, not at all? Absolutely. Did it have anything to do with Hillary Clinton being a fundamentally flawed candidate and a horrible option to counter against Donald Trump? Absolutely. So to sit there and just attribute it specifically to say it's a direct result of white supremacy, period, is just idiotic, cynical, out of context BS that unfortunately I would come to expect out of somebody like Jemele Hill, who's going to think before they tweet and believe ultimately in their own cynical view that it has to be this, it is absolute, and there's no other context. But of course, then you get the people with the naiveness that want to sit there and get all in a fuss about this, what she said on Twitter, and we're calling for her head. She should be suspended. She should be fired. We're going to boycott ESPN. We're going to protest. Who's the snowflake here? But they're calling out things and trying to point to hypocrisy. And of course, and you see it so often on social media every day, especially live in that alt-right type of bubble, you see their hypocrisy from the outside looking in all the time and how badly they take things out of context and leave important details out. Talking about Kurt Schilling. Oh, he said offensive things and he got fired. Yeah, but he didn't just have one offense. This was a series of it. And ultimately, Kurt Schilling flat out said racist things. Jemele Hill was accusing somebody of being racist. Kurt Schilling said racist, inappropriate, offensive things multiple times, and after being warned, still continued to do it. That's why he got fired. He got what was coming to him. You think about Anthony Federico. Who? If you remember 5 years ago, I won't repeat what the exact headlines said, but you remember it involved Jeremy Lin and something about in the armor? Not a good word. He was the editor that ultimately apparently allowed that to run on the digital platform. He got fired. And again, whether it was intentional or not, I don't know if in that case it really mattered all that much. Because it's still the end result ultimately happened. And sometimes in the regular working world, whether you chose to not be good at your job or you just weren't, really doesn't matter all that much. Ultimately, he paid the price. But it's because he allowed something like that as a headline. You have to understand what that means, the connotation that goes along with it. You shouldn't be surprised. Doug Adler, the tennis analyst who earlier this year said something about Venus Williams and her style of play. You can look it up. Well, whether it was meant to be racist or not, you have to be smart enough to choose your words, whether you like it or not in this world today. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes, honestly, it's bad. And yes, sometimes we are a little too PC. But to sit there and complain about political correctness doesn't give you an excuse to just be flat out racist and insensitive with some of the shit that you do say too. So Doug Adler, yes, got fired, but you have to look at what he said and what it could have meant in the context of this. Fair or not, it happened. I understand it. A lot of people are pointing to the Linda Cohn example and saying she got suspended by ESPN for saying they were too political. That was only one part of what she said. And as so often the case, people are leaving out important context. She questioned their business decisions in a public platform, talking about how they overspent on many of their products, talking about how the increasing politicalization of the network has also impacted their viewership because people don't want to tune in to watch politics. They want to watch sports. And as they've shifted in other ways, combined with cord cutting and other things, ESPN is suffering, paying too much for rights fees for the NFL and NBA. And you know what? Linda Cohn was absolutely right. But also know in the business world that they're not going to want a representative of theirs in public saying stuff like this about them. So you can't be surprised that she was suspended for saying something like this. It's not really the same. What Jemele Hill expressed was a personal opinion about more personal things. What Linda Cohn did on a public platform was in a way knock and bash the company. She was right about a lot of what she said. Pretty much all of what she said. And I don't think she should have got suspended, but you have to understand why she got suspended. And it's not just as simple as it's okay to suspend Linda Cohn because she's white and not suspend Jemele Hill because she's black and you're afraid of the social justice warriors and black Twitter is going to blast you and everything else. It goes deeper than that. But of course, some people are going to refuse to believe that, and it's whatever. My thing about Jemele Hill is this. The irony is if I remember correctly, I think it was back in like 2008, a couple years after she joined the network, wasn't she the one that got suspended for comparing rooting for the Boston Celtics to rooting for Adolf Hitler? And yet later on in that same year, I think Lou Holtz, if I'm not mistaken, made a Hitler reference as well, and he wasn't suspended. If you remember, Jemele Hill has said some provocative crap before, and she's gotten suspended for it before. So it's kind of ironic people are calling for the suspension now when back about a decade ago, she got suspended for a Hitler comparison and Lou Holtz didn't, if I think that's who it was. And while I'm not saying that people should have to stick to sports, Because ultimately, sometimes there are things in this world more important than sports, and sometimes the athletes make things about more than just sports. And frankly, sports has been a mirror of the culture for so many years, and politics has been a major part of it. I get it. People also need to understand that when they are public figures and speaking out on a public platform, knowing goddamn good and well why they're doing what they're doing, that there could potentially be consequences and repercussions to what they said. And I do look at this from a business stance and say ESPN kind of needs to rein the people in a little bit. Regardless of their political affiliation, I don't care. Because I could tell you personally as a consumer, I've largely stopped watching ESPN other than to watch games that are on there. I don't watch any Sports Center. I've never watched Jemele Hill and Michael Smith, his and hers. I don't watch Scott Van Pelt and his stupid crap. I don't watch all their other sports centers. I don't watch any of it. Because I don't need these freaking feminazi and social justice bullshit takes, some of which I agree with, some of which I do not. But the point is I come to sports in part as a sanctuary to try at least somewhat get away from all the other crap that I see on all the other news stations and all the other social media platforms. I don't need yet another reminder of it when I click on to, in my cable, channel 570 for ESPN HD. And yes, there is a clear instance here of, as the network over the past few years, that some of the hosts have become increasingly more politically motivated and politically active and politically vocal, that along with cord cutting and other things and just generally crappy programming, ESPN is not the giant that they used to be. It is time to rein this shit in a little bit. I'm not saying that people just need to solely stick to sports, but at some point in time, enough is a goddamn enough. And what I find funny is as she's tweeting about white privilege and talking about this and talking about that, do we really need to get on the fact that, really honestly, if you're being true, what discernible talent does Jemele Hill have that hundreds of other men or women don't? The fact is she got her role because she's a woman. And in journalism, and in particular sports journalism, one of the biggest privilege you can have is tits and a twat, period. I don't give a shit what anybody says. And all these defenders of her in the media, number one, y'all defending her. She not giving you the ass, dude, so let it go. Number two, she's strong and independent woman and all this crap until people come at her. No, if you believe in it, stand behind it, don't delete it like a bitch. And ultimately, this bitch is a millionaire. Stop making her out to be some goddamn victim. She gets a national television platform. The network created a damn show for her, changed the way they did their freaking nightly programming in part for her and Michael Smith. I feel no sympathy on certain things for her whatsoever. I wish I had some of those issues. Talking about privilege and shit. Absolutely there's freaking white privilege. But that's ironic coming from somebody who gets into the industry that she gets in and gets as far in the industry that she gets into, not because of discernible, quantifiable talent, but largely because she has tits and a twat. Give me a break. And the truth is, she said what she said because ultimately she wanted to say it to get attention. Don't believe anything else. And even though there were elements of truth to what some of the things that she said, some of it, of course, as I've pointed out earlier, was incredibly ridiculous and out of context. And for the conservatives and the naive bubble people that are taking crap out of context and getting all butthurt about this, if this offends you, get over it. If anything I said offends you, get over it. If anything Jemele Hill has said offends you, get over it. Don't talk about protecting free speech and then getting mad when people exercise their free speech. Now, granted, that goes to your side as well, and I'm with you on that. And all this talk about always throwing out the label of snowflakes, man, you all quick to boycott some crap and act like the snowflakes that you try to accuse others of being. And you can see it on Twitter. And stop being naive about who or what Trump is. And don't be surprised when people accuse you of being certain things because you so strongly associate yourself with that clown. Just saying. And then for the liberals and the Democrats that still want to pretend like that day in November didn't happen, ding dong dum dicks, it did. Get over it. The election is over. Move the fuck on. And yes, move the hell on. Period. Stop complaining, stop whining, and start doing something about it. Stop tweeting all these hot takes like it's going to make any damn bit of difference, because clearly there are enough people that knew who the hell Donald Trump was and it didn't matter. They still voted for him anyways. So what the hell at this point in time makes you think that anything you tweet or anything you talk about on TV or on radio or on your stupid podcast or anything else is going to make any dang bit of difference? What's going to make a difference is you getting involved and getting involved the right way. Donate to causes that matter to you, that are important. Donate to candidates and campaigns that have messages that you can get behind and believe in. Volunteer to help in your communities. Volunteer to help with those causes. Volunteer to help those candidates and those campaigns. And then go out and vote. And stop voting for Harambe and everybody else. Find these candidates, support them, make sure they get to the spot that you want, and then go vote for them. Stop worrying about what people are saying about Jemele Hill. You know, in terms of the Jemele Hill defenders at this point in time, y'all need to get a damn life too, because she's not giving it up to you, and she's not totally innocent here. And for the people that are all butthurt about Jemele Hill and trying to point out hypocrisy and double standards, let's not even get started. And number two, don't y'all have anything better to do with your lives? Because let's be honest, a lot of you aren't watching ESPN anyways, just like I'm not watching ESPN anyways. It's just frustrating to me in this world that so often it takes things like this for people to get the most attention. It's not the good and it's not the positive. It's the BS. And what's so frustrating to me is somebody who, in one hand in the real world, is at a detriment because of her pigment, because of her gender, in the profession that she's in, benefits greatly from her pigment and her gender. And don't tell me that she doesn't. And so many other talented people, frankly better people, will never get those opportunities because ultimately, unlike Jemele Hill, they're not a woman. So let's not make her out to be some innocent victim. Let's not talk about mansplaining or anything else. Bitch wants to be bold, then let her be bold and make her stand behind it. She's a millionaire anyways. What the hell difference does it make? Taking all y'all for a ride.